Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. These interviewed are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to past, present, and future legends, as well as business owners, employees, media, and land use warriors. Men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle we call off-road. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world that we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low Magazine yet? 4Low Magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. Today's guest is a Renaissance man, a creator, an adventurer, avid outdoorsman, a loving family man, and a great friend, Andrew Paulson. Good morning, Andrew Paulson. How are you doing? It's been, when I lived up here in Idaho, it was really great because we got to hang out a lot more than what we do anymore. The internet is great. I can kind of watch what you're doing, but it's not the same as being able to hang out like we are right now.
For sure.
It's really good to see you again.
It's good to see you, man, and it's a pleasure to be here and just sitting across the table from you and just having a chit chat.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm going to enjoy this one.
Good.
For people that don't know Andrew, a little quick synopsis. Andrew is a rock crawler. I'm going to say he's a Renaissance man. That's what Shelley likes to say. Andrew finds something that piques his interest, and he goes all in. I don't know how all in he stays. I think he's one of those guys that just has to absorb information and try stuff. And very technical, very cerebral, unlike myself, which is probably more physical and nobody's never gonna accuse me of any kind of genius, that's for sure. So, Andrew, it's been a great pleasure knowing you, and I'm really looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, same.
So let's get started. And where were you born and raised? Tell us about it.
So, was born in El Paso, Texas, 1977.
Oh, you're a Texas boy.
I am a Texas boy, and I was raised a city slicker.
Really?
Believe it or not.
In El Paso?
In El Paso, Texas. We had malls. That's what we do on the weekend, go hang out in the mall. It's been a long way from there to the redneck I am today.
And do you speak Spanish?
I used to.
Okay.
A lot of it's left over the years, but I understand it more. So it's always fun in Idaho when individuals are speaking Spanish on an elevator and they think I can't hear them. I think that's always pretty interesting. And they'll tell a joke and I start laughing and they look at me like, "Oh, what's this redneck Idahoan? He speaks our language."
That's awesome.
So we moved. So my childhood, it was a great childhood. 2 very academic parents. My dad worked for UTEP University of El Paso. My mom was a resource room teacher, mostly with the hearing impaired in El Paso. So very academically raised. So my mom always made sure I had pretty good educational platforms. Got me into the good school programs, and this is back when public schools were a little different than they are today. And I think the best part about Texas is, big city, but lots of educational opportunities, lots of stimulus. I was diagnosed with ADD, I think in like 1988, and I think that's where my mom got kind of hyper vigilant about, I'd have my regular homework at the end of the day, and she would give me more, being a teacher. So this is kind of why I always kind of fought the educational institution, because I'd had enough of it when I was a kid.
Okay, that's understandable. So growing up in El Paso, and your parents in academia, I would imagine were you a good student? But if you had ADD, it was probably hard for you to. I know that most ADD students have some problems with.
I always needed the extra help to get the grade. I was honestly a C student average, but science, A student. So if it interested me, it was, like you said, all or nothing.
Right,
If
you could
it
dive
holds,
deep
I
into
could
it.
dive deep into it. But if it was, geography or history, or, something that just really wasn't hands-on, yeah, it was funny. I was having a conversation with one of my employees the other day, and it was talking about my grades on my report card. And he'd say, "Oh, a pleasure to have in class. Doesn't live up to his potential." So we always talk about. So our new saying is, "I just need to get my potential in a pile." Get my shit in a pile. if you
Yes.
will. Story of my life, but.
So science was your go-to.
Yeah, I always hung out with some pretty nerdy guys. One guy, Kartik Srinivaskan was his name. I mean, he wrote a mathematical paper in college that I couldn't even follow. But yeah, I mean, I was hanging out with the nerdy kids for the
Okay.
most part. Those were the ones that I was attracted to. Just either they were very creative or scientific, or they weren't the kids that were worried about who had the coolest kicks, you know what I mean? Or
Right.
the best clothes.
So did you participate in any extra activities at school?
So won a few science fairs.
Okay.
I won a couple of scholastic writing awards.
Very
and
good.
that's kind of where I got my skill set when I did a couple articles for Forlow.
Right.
And so I always had a good, decent beat on that. My dad was a swimmer in college, so I was on swim team, and I was last place all the time because I just didn't have the build for it. But
Right.
I could float.
You could float.
I could float. So that was good.
You didn't need to wear a life vest while
No,
you in
no.
a swim competition. Okay.
No. Played soccer for a while.
All right.
That was kind of I was pretty good at playing left wing or right wing or a safety.
Okay.
Never had me up front, but I took a couple hits to the groin, and I took it like a man. So, being a safety on the goals where we'd stand inside the goal, to shrink up the goal.
Right.
Yeah. So, and my dad coached that. My dad coached because he's definitely jockish. He right now in his retirement, he watches every volleyball, basketball, college sports is his jam. And so he coached basketball for a while. I was on the bench most of the time. I was a scrawny little kid growing up, so just didn't have the, so.
So then, what did the family do for like vacations or on the weekends when they weren't teaching? What'd you guys do for activities?
That's a good, great question. So as far as vacations go, well, I'll come back to that. Our weekends were pretty much, up in the morning, eating Fruit Loops or Cheerios. Actually, Cheerios, because my parents were kind of health nuts too, which is great. They were very vigilant about trying to raise good kids, which is awesome. It'd be a couple hours of cartoons, and then it was TV off. Let's read a book. Do chores around the house. My dad at the time had a kennel that he bred Great Pyrenees.
Oh, wow.
It was called Dunord's Kennel. I remember at one point he had something like 13 Great Pyrenees. in a small backyard in El Paso, Texas.
Wow.
On Rim Road. And
Was your job to pick up poop?
Yes, sir. And brush peonies because they have an undercoat.
Yes.
So I would get paid, I think it was something like 50 cents for a grocery bag of hair. So I was always taught to learn my allowance, and I think that's was great at the time. I hated it because, you know, all my rich kid in that area, you know, they just got a free allowance. They didn't have to do anything for it.
Right.
My parents taught me, you know, you work for it, and that has taken me, well, you know.
Right. That's
pretty
why
far.
you're in business for yourself.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
You're not on the dole.
Yep. So I wanted to come back to another story. Vacations, you said.
Right.
Yeah. So, my mom was born in Chicago. My dad raised and born in Minnesota. So grandparents were in Minnesota, and my uncle was there too. And you know, we would fly out for a week or two at a time, visit the cousins. But we'd always, you know, land of 1,000 lakes, we'd fish. Now, there's not a lot of fishing in El Paso, Texas, but in Minnesota, that's what you do.
Right. I don't know. There's
Yeah.
what can you fish for on, you know, the
You know,
what's the big river there?
Carp and canals, you know, the Rio Grande.
In the Rio Grande.
Yeah, you fish for migrants. I don't know. I don't know if we can say that, but yeah.
We can say that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, you know, my friend's house. I remember watching them try to cross the border. I mean, so I literally, we lived on Rim Road, so I could see the lights of Juarez.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at night. So yeah, city life, fair amount of crime, sirens going all night, and so I just thought that was normal. But again, my parents did a really good job of making sure my brother, my sister, and myself had a good, safe pocket to grow up in.
You were talking about the fishing going up to
yeah,
when
so-
I interrupted. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're okay. So yeah, Minnesota. So that was our vacations, was family. And I remember my grandma, she had, I don't know, a quarter of an acre of property, and she had this big garden, and I used to kind of like hang out in the garden and then building forts with my cousins and stuff, you know, just outdoors.
Right.
And you know, we really didn't have a lot of outdoors in El Paso, again, but I've always been drawn to that, and through this conversation, you'll discover that that's where I thrive, is in the outdoors. I mean, everything I've done from that point to being in a tree to here, I've always been drawn to just playing outside.
I always say that I was born in the wrong time.
Correct.
You know, I tell everybody I live a Bedouin lifestyle. I love to move around. I can't. I've always had a hard time staying in one place, and you know, anchoring in that spot.
Sure.
Even when I was a kid, I mean, I was always out in the county park and the city park. They kind of ran together where I grew up, and we had thousands of acres to mess around in, and that was my playground. I mean, it was.
Yeah.
You know, if we weren't playing football or baseball or basketball at the park, we'd go to the county park and ride our bikes or hike, and, you know, in scouts and doing all that kind of stuff. And everything was outside. And I did that my whole life. I've never stayed with a job more than 5 years.
Yep.
And typically they were 1 or 2 years at the most until I got into rock crawling.
Right.
And then I realized what it was I wanted to do. But I always thought I should have been born like in the early 1800s. I should have been one of these mountain men that helped discover, you know, Yellowstone and all of that. You know, I'm a real fan of reading that kind of history.
Yeah.
And I just find it fascinating. You know, was it a good lifestyle back then for the people that did it? Yeah. For the people that tried to do it and didn't like it, or, you know, came across unwelcoming natives, you know, could be a short lifespan.
Sure. Or a toothache.
Yeah.
You
Could
know,
kill
you didn't
you.
have a
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely see that about you. You're an explorer, I would say, for sure.
Right. And so I can see the same thing in you, you know, when you're saying that, you know, that climbing those trees and building those forts, and, you know, that was going to be your lifestyle. So after high school, what was the next step in your development?
So, well, let me back up a bit because
Okay.
I've got one story I want to tell.
All right.
And again, it's an interesting one. The nerd side of me. I've always kind of liked the technology things.
Right.
I'm drawn to SpaceX and just the way things work. My brain has to figure it out. You know, again,
I've seen that in you. Yeah.
Comes back to that Renaissance thing. You know, whether it's building a buggy that doesn't work and one that does, it's just I got to tinker.
Right.
And one of my early memories, it was about 5th grade, and my parents, you know, in case there was ever an emergency, we had a code word in case they sent a friend to pick us up, right? And it was
Right.
Tolly. It was one of my dad's Great Pyrenees, one of his favorite females. So this guy, Victor Vargas, and his daughter Vicky and I were in the same 5th grade class, and it was kind of an accelerated class. It wasn't the regular educational class. So
Right.
There was always special creative stuff. I don't remember what it was called, Project Challenge or something. They gave it a name, and my mom made sure to pull some strings to get me in that. So I'm sitting in class one day, and we're just starting class, and Vicky's dad shows up. He's like, "Yeah, I'm pulling you and my daughter out of school today." I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "Yeah, we got somewhere to be. I've got your parents' permission." I was like, "Well, what's the code word?" And he's like, "Tolly." Okay, so I get in this white truck, GMC or something. We start heading out to White Sands Missile Range. So apparently he was like head of security at White Sands. So we're going through these gates, and they're just waving them through. This is 5th grade memory. I'm just like, what the heck is going on? He's like, "Well, we're going to watch a space shuttle land." So it was the year that Florida got rained out. So we're clear in the middle of White Sands Missile Range, and we go to there was a shop out there on the tarmac or something. I remember sitting on a washer and a dryer. We're just waiting, you know, and there's just this big sandy runway in front of us. And military police come by, and they're like, you got to back up. Because we were apparently sitting on the runway.
With a washer or dryer.
Well, yeah, there was all kinds of junk out there. I mean, I don't know if they were nuclear testing or back in the day, you know, stuff
Right.
just accumulates out there people don't know about. So, yeah, sure as shit, you know, we're sitting out there for a couple hours, and here comes, I believe it was Columbus. And, I mean, I heard the 3 cracks when it came out of sonic sound. Bang, bang, bang. And here comes this thing it felt like I could touch it as a kid. And, you know, so it heads down the runway, touches down, and I was like, well, I thought about that experience later in life, and I'm like, how did I end up there, of all places? So I asked my parents, I said, what exactly did Victor Vargas do for a living? And they're like, we don't know. He couldn't talk about it. So that was my 5th grade year. Then adolescence happened, puberty, and, you know, it turned into a shithead probably.
So let's talk about that. Some of us avoided trouble
Yep.
in those those years when you start changing, puberty. Some of us got into, were maybe ankle or knee deep or waist deep in trouble, but never got caught. And then there was some, you know, that got caught and had issues. Where did you fall in that spectrum?
So there we come back into junior high. So we moved to Pocatello, Idaho in 1991.
Okay.
Okay. And, you know, building forts was something we were kind of into growing up if we could. But so we met up with the neighborhood kids, and we decided we're going to build a fort just off the back end of my parents' property where like 4 fences intersected. There was kind of a little gap there. So trying to impress the new neighborhood kids. Now, I didn't know what Mormons were, or, you know, it was different world for coming from El Paso. I knew what
Right.
Catholics were, but
Right.
not Mormons. And so trying to impress the neighborhood kids, we snuck out at night. And there was a house under construction, and we stole a bunch of tools to build our fort. Okay.
You borrowed.
Well, we were going to give them back.
See, that's a
But
borrow.
I didn't realize that, a nail gun at the time was $1,000. So it was a grand theft
Wow.
adolescent charge. So to build a fort to impress the neighborhood kids, but at first degree, second degree, because it was at night, we snuck out to commit the crime. So yeah, my adolescent years, I never acted out in a violent way, but yeah, there was some
issues.
There
Yeah.
was some sneaking around, get you that dopamine hit,
Yep.
please your friends,
There
just
you go.
figuring out the world.
So at that age, you'd moved to Idaho.
Yep.
And
No friends. I mean, I
Right.
basically was uprooted. All my friends.
was it your parents chasing a job?
No. Yes and no. So my dad got a job here at ISU. He was the director of counseling and testing,
Okay.
and he was actually the dean of students for a while. So he's a big deal there through the paces. No, basically my sister, the crime in the middle schools, this is back in '91,
Right.
they already had metal detectors in the middle schools back then.
In El Paso.
In El Paso,
Right.
yes. So my sister was like, so I have a younger brother, older sister. I'm middle child syndrome for sure.
Okay.
My sister was, she kind of bounced between El Paso and Minnesota high school. So she kind of was more raised in Minnesota, come back for summers. But the crime had gotten so bad. My brother was in grade school. I was in middle school. She's like, she was the big influence. She told my parents, I think you need to get the boys out of El Paso. It's just not going to be, they're going to go into middle school, grade school, high school. They're going to get bullied. They're going to get into some trouble.
Right.
So, and my parents kind of saw that. So my dad interviewed here at ISU and got the job and, yeah, moved us.
Perfect.
But I think most of it was for my brother and myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just trying to get us out of that inner city and all the crap that comes with it,
What was that transition like moving out here? You had your brother. It sounds like your sister might have been already out of high school at that point.
So she had graduated that year,
Okay.
and she was off to college at Hamlin University in Minnesota.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So at that point, it was just the two boys.
correct.
And how much younger is your brother?
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
parents did the 5, 5, and 5 plan.
5, 5, and 5. There you go.
Yeah.
I've always wondered about scheduling. So you moved from El Paso to here, which is wide open spaces, lots of it.
Yes.
You guys were probably pretty close to the campus then, so more in the.
Up Johnny Creek actually.
Okay.
So up on the hill.
All right.
Nice house. It just had just gotten built. A lot of builders were going at that time, so my brother and I actually got to pick out our own fixtures and tile for our bathrooms.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, separate bathrooms. Yeah. So, I mean, my parents were not super wealthy, but like I said, they always made sure that we had Christmas and things were going good on that. So yeah, it's interesting. So I was in Boy Scouts in El Paso.
Right.
Loved it. Again, so Scouts, in Idaho is used to be under the LDS Church. In El Paso, it was either an Episcopal church or the Catholic church, right? So that's where you'd meet. But there was a little less segregation. So when we moved here, I had just finished my 50-miler hike. I don't know if you know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 50-mile hike with Boy Scouts. So basically, in Durango, Colorado, we took the yellow train in, dropped us off in the middle of nowhere, 50-miler. So I always joke, I hiked 50 of the miles coming to Idaho because that was the same week that my parents moved us.
Okay.
So they picked me up in Colorado, Durango, said bye to all my Boy Scout friends, and boom, we're now in Pocatello, Idaho.
Okay.
So tried the Scout thing here for a while. Turned out well because I wasn't LDS. There was the actual events that happened after the Scout meeting at
Right.
the church, and I wasn't invited to those because I was some shenanigan Episcopal Texan,
Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
So-
We all get it.
yeah, so that's I think where following that to get to you the timeline was where trying to impress friends building forts that I got into some trouble. And it was funny, you know, my parents, being the good parents that they are, obviously we got busted. Probation officer shows up. I mean, it was pretty embarrassing. And, yeah, you know, the mini dome.
Right.
So, you know, all the seats there. So what they used to do for probation kids is it was washing seats at the mini dome.
Oh, wow. Everybody that
hours.
doesn't know, ISU, Idaho State University, has a dome stadium. And it's like an indoor track and a football field, and it's an old wood building, actually. And isn't it all wood framed on the inside?
It isn't wood; it's steel, but
Oh, is it
it's
steel? Okay.
but I believe it was like the second largest indoor dome building built back in its time. So
Okay.
it held some records for it. I mean, it's big enough that it'll actually make its own cumulus cloud.
Oh, wow.
Like it'll actually rain inside there because it's tall enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
now I've got mini dome stories too.
So you washed a lot of those seats
I
then?
washed a lot of those seats, and I remember my mom, probation officer's like, yeah, he only has to do like 10 hours of probation. She grabs the sheet out of this probation officer's hand. She tears it up. She's like, I'm going to make my own sheet, and there's going to be 50 hours on that thing. And
Thanks, Mom.
And I was grounded for a year. So, you know,
Did everybody get their equipment back?
everybody got their gear back.
Oh,
yeah.
then she should have gotten easier on you.
No, I needed it.
Okay.
I deserved it for sure.
So how did the fort turn out, knowing how you are nowadays?
Probably it was the second coolest fort I ever built.
Nice. Nice.
The first maybe being this place, but
Okay. Awesome. So then you're going to school, finishing up your school here in Idaho.
Yep.
Not doing the scouting thing anymore. How long did you get into scouts?
so kind of gave it up that year,
Okay.
just because it was such, you know, it was a dead end. You know, it was always roadblocks being with the culture.
Right.
So the year after I was released from being grounded, there was an Episcopal camp up in northern Idaho, Paradise Point.
Okay.
Okay, rustic cabins. They were built by prisoners back in the 50s or 60s. My parents went up there with the church, and we did what they called work camp, where everybody volunteers for a weekend or a week, and they get the camp up and running for the season. Not a very well-funded camp at the time, but that was it. So that was kind of my release of my being grounded from like the last year.
Okay. More community service.
Yep, pretty much. But I still had that kind of work ethic that my parents taught me. And I was like, yeah, I'm out and about. I mean, I remember we were digging propane line trenches and cleaning up, and I just worked my butt off. We get back, and about 4 or 5 days later, Mom comes down into my room and says, hey, how would you like to work in McCall for the summer? They saw your work ethic. You're going to be washing dishes and pots and pans and in the kitchen, you know, plunging toilets. But how would you like to get a hall pass? And I was like, hell yeah, you know, that beats being grounded in Pocatello, Idaho.
Right.
So they sent me up there that summer, and it was kind of a rough go. There was definitely some bullying from the older staff and pots and pans at 3 a.m. and scheduling issues. But so I started there. And that would have been in trying to think, about 93.
Okay.
After my year being grounded. And that was my salvation, was because it was outside on Payette Lake on a peninsula. You pretty much had water sports, canoes, hiking, and pretty much no parental guidance at that point. Most of the staff were usually college kids.
Okay.
On break. So the first year there was pots and pans, and then they figured out I was kind of handy and I could pick some things up, and they were doing some remodeling. So that's where I learned how to do some electrical, sheetrock. So now I'm talking 16, 17 years old. Now, I did rock climb a lot here in Pocatello, so I did have enough of a sense about rock climbing. You know, ropes, harnesses, and whatnot. So as I evolved through the camp throughout the summers, I worked there 7 summers.
Oh, wow.
They camp director saw potential in it, and they basically built me a ropes course.
Nice.
And so Project Adventure came in, built the ropes course for the camp, and they sent me to Oregon to get trained doing high and low ropes course, team development and all that. So by the time I was 18, 19, I had already had a ropes course experience under my belt.
Nice.
So, when I graduated high school, I was rock climbing and then spending summers up in McCall. Very fortunate, because I think that's what kept me from getting in more trouble than if I was just stuck in Pocatello,
Cool.
Idaho.
Excellent.
That makes sense.
And so the camp was a church camp, but they'd cycle kids in
Yep.
from different areas every week or so, or
Yeah, so it was a week-long camp, except for the kindergarten camp. I think it was like a weekend, just, the homesick kids. So, yeah, you had everything from, and they broke it up kind of like the middle school cycle. You had the grade school camp, kindergarten, grade school, middle school, high school camp. And I was a camp counselor for a while, too, in that stint. And they would always give me the hard kids. Go figure. But no, again, great experience growing up, because otherwise I'd have just been sitting in Pocatello, Idaho,
looking for trouble.
looking for trouble. Yeah. So, plus I got a lot of great experience, everything from maintenance to building to the ropes course to the counseling. And the nice thing about that camp is it's Episcopal, so it wasn't, all walks of life. If you're Mormon, Episcopal, Catholic, if you're atheist, it was very open as far as that stigmatism goes, where you don't get that with a lot of church camps. Either
Correct.
you're under our regime or nothing at all.
Right. Yeah. And then they got all the prayer sessions or
Sure.
whatever, Bible studies and all that kind of stuff going on.
And that was always optional, too. I mean,
Okay.
it was funny because I never really did go to chapel. They had a Wednesday and a Sunday chapel, and I always kind of skipped out. I'm like, well, my chapel's hiking in the wilderness. So,
So you get through high school doing that.
and part of college.
Part of college.
Yep.
And your little brother, did he follow in the footsteps, or was he?
He worked in McCall for a while, yes.
Okay.
Yep. He did some of the arts and crafts stuff there. He worked several summers there as well, as did my sister.
Oh, really? Okay.
Honestly. So, yeah, it was kind of a family event. Venue, I should say. So, yeah, my little brother, he smarter than me and way more put together as far as starting and finishing things.
Okay.
I think he learned a lot from me as far as how to get away with things. He's even said that to me. He's like, yeah, I learned by watching you mess up. So he got in as much trouble as I did. He just didn't get caught.
Right.
Yeah. So he ended up after, he was straight A student, was the head speaker at his class of Century High School here, and went off to Wisconsin State University, and he got his degree in nuclear engineering.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
So he is currently the state inspector of Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah. So he's got three. He's got kids. They're a handful, but he's a great dad, and yeah. So
Awesome.
So he followed more of that academic world.
Okay.
But yeah, he's done good for himself.
So what kind of are there? So you said there was some hazing, kind of, I guess you'd call it, or
Sure.
initiations
Yeah.
when you were at the camp, which I remember that stuff from Boy Scouts as well.
Oh yeah.
Was there? Did you do that when you became one of the older kids?
No, not really.
Okay.
I'm more of a lover than a fighter. That's kind of my nature. And it was more on the staff. We had this one guy, I think his name, I don't know if it was his real name, but they called him Buff. We'd be at the serving line, and he'd have a dip of chew in and spitting in his cup in his shirt while he's serving food, Well, they go out to the bars and get drunk, and it would be his turn to do pots and pans. Well, he just wouldn't do it. So about 3 a.m., he'd kick me out of bed and be like, pots and pans, go to it. So, yeah, in the middle of the night, I'd be rustled out of my sleeping bag and washing pots and pans,
Otherwise, Buff would
kick my ass.
Right, exactly.
I did not mess with him. Yeah, he was a scrapper, and he was pretty intoxicated. So it's just like I let it be, you know. And I remember
Kind of like doing somebody's homework.
Yeah, exactly. Again, just that nerd thing.
Right. So then, after camp, what'd you get into?
So I was pretty heavy into rock climbing.
Okay.
And outdoor activities at that point, water skiing, which I ran at camp. So my first year at ISU, I didn't know really what I wanted to study. Just, again, my brain all over the place. You look around the shop, you can see it. But but there was the outdoor program at ISU, and they had dabbled I had dabbled with that program in high school and even early in junior high. So there was definitely some mentors that came out of that program. They did certain rock climbing here at Ross Park and various ski programs and whatnot. So I was like, yeah, wouldn't mind working for that place. But so my first college job was Reed's Gym, which is the big gym at ISU.
Right.
They had just finished building the climbing wall, and with my ropes course history with camp, I figured, well, I'll apply for this job and see. So I interviewed. They're like, can you teach us how to put a harness on? Can you teach us how to tie a figure 8 knot, how to belay, all that? And so I got the interview done and was a little nervous. I'm like, I don't know if I got it or not. Again, it was just a college job.
Right.
Just finished building the wall. Anybody who's familiar with it, it's a big climbing wall. Well, it was blank. There were no holds on it, but there were cases of holds.
Okay.
So they call me back and they say, well, we're sorry you didn't get the rock climbing wall attendant job. I was like, oh, okay, well, why? And they're like, well, we're going to make you lead rock climbing attendant. So we're going to put everybody under you. And my first, I want to say it was in the summertime, my first, call it 4 weeks of that job, the wall wasn't open to the public, was just to build climbing routes.
Nice.
I mean, I was young.
In hog heaven.
Hog heaven, for sure. Because I
Right.
love the puzzle of rock climbing. You know, right foot, left foot, order of operation. It's very similar to rock climbing. It's, you know, tires got to be in the right spot. It's the same thing with rock climbing. Your feet, your 4 points got to be in the right spot.
Right.
So my brain's always liked that puzzle. So yeah, I was in heaven. And yeah, so I worked that for summers and then eventually bounced over to the outdoor program.
Okay.
After that.
And what'd you do at the outdoor program?
So, was a student worker for a while. Did everything from setting up open climb at Ross Park to taking people on float trips like Palisades, freshman orientation. So river rafting, helped with the kayak course that they do in the pool there. So again, everything outdoors.
Nice.
So that was, again, I come back to that draw, playing outside. That's
And not just one thing, getting a chance to get your hands into everything.
everything. So perfect for the way I function.
Right.
Yeah. Wasn't just bored doing the same thing over and over. Yeah.
Cool.
So then there was an opening for so the outdoor program was a co-program with CW Hogg.
Okay.
It stands for the Cooperative Wilderness Handicapped Outdoor Group.
Right.
So in conjunction with the outdoor program, they would take individuals with disabilities and recreate outside with obviously modifications. So I kind of fell into that interim spot and eventually got that job full time. So I had the adaptive water ski program was under mine. You know, take paraplegics, quads, people with disabilities out to American Falls, and we had adaptive equipment. We'd take them water skiing, you know,
Nice.
recreating outside. And then that's also where I kind of came into meeting my wife at the time. Well, not my wife at the time, my current wife.
Your,
my wife.
Your wife now.
Now, yes, thank you. I
At
get a little
that
tongue twisted.
current time was not your wife.
Nope,
Yes.
she was an intern,
Okay.
And we hit it off on the main Salmon River doing a CW Hogg. She's an occupational therapist, so she was doing her internship with CW Hogg, part of her credits, getting her master's degree. And we met on the river, taking individuals with disabilities on a week-long float trip on the main Salmon River. So that's where we kind of met. And so that river has a lot of significance for me.
Right. That makes
And
sense.
we'll come back to that story.
Okay. Not too much detail on that story, but no, kidding. So then, as you're going through this program and you're teaching and everything like that, anything else that you did, or was that pretty much your sole focus?
That was my sole focus. I never finished college, but I was a student for 4 or 5 years. I was taking what they call the bachelor, it's the BUS degree, Bachelor of University Studies.
Okay.
So, ironically, I was doing fine arts and metalsmithing with a minor in outdoor recreation.
Okay.
So, again, all over the place.
Right.
If you will. Just going with the flow. So when I got the opportunity opened up for that position at CW Hogg, that's kind of when I quit going to school and started doing that. So that's my lead into starting a business.
Okay.
Okay, there was a individual, Colin Dye, still touch base with him. He's a paraplegic, got injured, a widowmaker. He was cutting firewood, another log hit him, took his back out. But very active guy, outdoorsy, okay? So he used to build these, what we called cross-country ski adaptive frames out of chromoly.
All right.
Okay, and I'd hang out in his shop. He had a metal lathe, a welder, TIG welder. Yeah, I mean, we were made to be friends, let's put it that way. So I was always at his place dinking around. He'd let me use his lathe and his mill and his welder. And of course, everything was 4 foot off the ground, so I had to adapt to his shop.
Right.
So he's building these cross-country ski frames, and you just basically mount 2 ski frames. They sit in the track, and you just push, you know. But he was taking them to Idaho Falls to get powder coated. And so one day we were chit-chatting. I don't remember how it all came to fruition, but we had just bought this property with Shannon and I, and had this shop, and I built a little homemade oven for doing my various projects, especially for my old international harvester that I used to wheel.
Okay.
Okay, so I was a scout guy.
Makes sense.
That's where I started, you know, the corn binder. Yep. So I built a little oven for my projects, and I showed him a sample, and he's like, well, I've been running these frames to IF. I'll pay you to powder coat these. So I started powder coating for him on the weekends. At the time, I also had a side sprinkler job business. Was doing my full-time thing with CW Hogg, and then started this powder coat thing. Took out a Thrifty Nickel ad. Next thing you know, I'm getting a little bit of business. Small oven, 4 by 5 by 6 foot, homemade, nothing huge. But now I got like 3 things going on at once, and I realized, okay, I got to pick.
Right.
You know, so here's one job, CW Hogg, which didn't pay much. It's a great job if you're a college student living in your parents' basement, but it's not a living by any means, you know, as far as long-term
Viability,
fruition.
right?
Yeah. So I started building my second oven, and that was 8 by 8 by 10 foot. So that was in about December. So I kind of did that at nights, stopped doing the sprinkler thing, maintained my CW Hogg job, and then there was a kind of a regime change with bosses, and this new boss at CW Hogg, I was like, I'm not willing to work for him, just for a lot of reasons. I thought he was going to get people hurt. He just didn't.
Personality classes, yeah.
And just responsibility.
Right.
You know, you're taking people on river trips, recreating. You got to watch things, and he just wasn't watching things.
Right.
So I was like, I don't want to work for him, because I didn't. My conscience was like, this is not going to work out. So, yeah, we did the ski swap in November. I quit, and then started the powder coat thing full time.
Excellent. Okay, so you're doing your powder coating as a business now full time, and how was at that point you had the large you had built the larger one,
Yes.
and you did that all on your own, which doesn't surprise me at all because everything I've ever seen you do, you might buy parts, but you don't buy equipment.
Correct.
Maybe when it comes to a welder or a drill press or a lathe, but you're not gonna, you're doing that because you're not buying parts from somebody else. You're making your own parts.
Correct. So I think that comes down to just being resourceful with the dollar,
Okay, frugal,
because I don't have a money backer.
right?
Didn't have that. I mean, my parents helped out when they could, but I think they bought me my first air compressor, but that's about, they put $700 in a big air compressor, and the rest was up to me. So when you look at the price of back then a powder coat oven that was a 10-footer, it was like $60,000-$70,000, where I could get it built for, I think I was about $6,000.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So, and if I had the skill set to build it,
Why not?
why not capitalize on that?
And what time period was that, do you think?
About 2004.
2004, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, because we bought this place in 2003. So yeah, 2004 was when I made that transition.
And the shop here is, when you first built the shop, okay, you guys bought the property, it was just bare property, right?
No, it had the house and this original shop, not
Okay.
the addition.
Oh, not
so
the
it was,
addition,
It was 40
okay.
by 50. The guy who originally had the place, Don Schnook, would have loved to have met him because I've heard stories. He was an all or nothing kind of guy too.
All right.
Yeah. So I've met some of his relatives just doing business around town over. He's like, oh yeah, you got Don Schnook's old place. That's always going to be Don Schnook's old place.
Someday people will be saying, well, that's Andrew's old place.
Yep. So I did build the addition and then the sandblast shop were
Okay.
add-ons. Yep. So
So then you're let's go into the four-wheel drive side of things.
absolutely.
So you're a corn binder guy. What attracted you to the corn binders?
So we got to back up on the timeline a little bit.
No worries.
So my buddy, this would have been my senior year. I was still traveling to McCall in summers. I finally got my license. I didn't think I'd get my license till I was like 20 or something. I was a late bloomer as far as that goes. So my buddy, Jason Chandler, his dad was into scouts.
Okay.
He had a scout. I just thought they were just cool.
Right.
We'd run around town. It was before internet, so we'd run around town in a scout and, flirting with the girls, meeting up with buddies to go camping, campfires, all that kind of good stuff. And he's like, at the time, I had no mechanical experience as far as vehicles go.
Okay.
So there was an old place in town, Panique's Upholstery Shop. They had 3 scouts. All 3 of them were run down, did not run. So I bought those 3 scouts for like a couple $1,000. My buddy Jason's garage and his dad, they loaned me his garage. And I honestly didn't know what a transfer case was at the time.
Well, that's just a hunk of steel
It's
down
just
there.
I had no idea how any driveline. What's that? What's an axle shaft? He had no clue. So he and his dad took me under their wing, working on these corn binders, trying to get one running out of the 3. There was just enough there to make it happen. So we spent 2 weeks. That was my mechanical education.
2 weeks.
There were a lot of late nights, falling asleep underneath the vehicle. You're tightening one bolt, next thing you know, you're loosening it because you're just delirious from sleep deprivation. Yeah, so that was just like my first vehicle I owned.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was my first vehicle. So drove it to McCall and blew up the motor in the process. So that summer it sat in a shop getting the top end rebuilt. And then the next summer I had it, took it up to McCall, and for camp. Well, weekends I would just take it up these old mining roads and go fishing. And so I kind of learned what four-wheel drive was on these old mining roads, just soloing it. Learned how to stack bark when you get it stuck in the mud, or had a high lift jack, so figured out how to get it up off the ground and get enough dirt or rocks underneath it. You know, that was my learner course of rock stacking.
Okay. Yeah. Comes in handy.
'Cause there was nobody there to help me, so it was on me. And that was just my getaway from the people, because you're around people that you work with and the campers. I mean, it's a very busy people environment, so I always needed to decompress.
Right.
So it was like a fishing rod, my Scout, and old logging roads up in
So-
northern Idaho.
So the one thing that I see that's kind of a consistent is fishing.
Yes.
And what is it about fishing that you like so much? Do you eat fish?
I do eat fish. Yep. So in McCall, I mean, that's what I ate. I'd maybe grab a baked potato, and if I got my protein, I got my protein. If not, I just eat my potato.
Okay. That's handy then, being
Yeah.
in Idaho.
I think it does stem from a early neural pathway from those memories with my uncle, my grandpa, and my dad fishing in Minnesota. It was, family reunions. It was family. It was busy, but we'd go out on the boat or out on the dock fishing, and everybody relaxed. So that's the place when I'm on the water fishing. If I'm catching something or not, that's my decompress. That's where my brain kind of slows down and doesn't pay attention to everything. The noise. That's where
Right.
the noise really shuts down, especially with the ADD brain. When I fish, it's like I'm not everywhere and anywhere at the same time.
Right.
If that makes sense.
I've always loved fishing. I've gotten out of it for so many years
Mm-hmm.
just because of scheduling.
Sure.
Went fishing this last year, took little Rich's son Austin and Peyton, two of my grandkids, and
Yep.
we went fishing up above Placerville. And Peyton she wasn't interested so much in fishing. She just wanted to hang out and talk.
Yep.
Austin, it's kind of, he wanted to spin cast and keep walking up and down the,
Keep moving.
yeah. Oh, I got one. No, I didn't get one. Oh, no, I got one. That kind of thing. And me, I'd hook a worm up and sit and drown the worm, not really expecting to catch anything, or even didn't care if I caught anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just, when I had my landscape construction company, fishing was a release, like you say, to get away from everything. And there'd be times I'd put a line out with just a weight on it.
Yep.
Not even a hook, no bait.
I get it.
And I just throw it out there, and people would walk by. Having any luck? No, not today. But I never tried. It was just, I'd throw a line, sit in a chair, maybe read a book. But it was just a way to decompress.
Yeah. And I would say the other draw isn't necessarily about the fishing, but the water.
Right.
Because for some reason, I don't know if it's growing up being in swim team, but being on the water, that's the other decompress. Just the sound of the river. It just, for whatever reason, being on the water always had a relaxing allure to me.
I've been the same way. Some people will say, well, it's because you're a Pisces. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if I believe in all that
Sure.
hocus pocus. About the only thing I really, and I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in, I believe in aliens, but that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk is an alien, but okay.
Exactly. At least South African.
Sure, yeah. Well, that's where they landed. That's okay. So another thing you said, when you're an entrepreneur, you're a business guy, and it's hard sometimes to put that down because you're thinking about the next day, 3 days out. You're always doing the stuff different than the guys who are punching a clock.
Right.
Right. You're making I'm making sure the oven runs, the sandblast room runs. So when the guys show up, punch their clock, we get business done. A lot of people don't see that behind the scenes.
Right.
So again, that comes back to that fishing or just being on the water. It's one of the few times where my brain just puts that down.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I think that's what, Shelley is the same way. She loves being on the water. And I think that's one reason we own a boat, even if we can't get to it all the time anymore.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm heading to Corpus here in a couple of weeks for a week, and to prep the boat for the season. So it's going to be. I'm really looking forward to being back on the boat and the water, because that's the one thing nice about a boat. It's surrounded in water.
Yep. And I get that. It's the boat, it's the water. So it's not necessarily the fishing. That's a fun bonus,
Right.
especially when it's hot. And you're catching them every cast. But even then, just being on the water and nothing's happening, it's to decompress. So yeah. Speaking of Shelley, how many years has it been?
Well, as of today, it's 12 years, and
I'd say that's about. Yeah, it was about.
and it was 12 years 1 week ago that I called you up and said, "Hey, are you an officiant? Do you have your marriage? Can you marry people?" And you said, "No, my parents do, though." And I said, "Well, I'm not looking for your parents.
Sure.
Would you consider marrying Shelley and I?" I gave you 1 week.
Yep. And I got online and we made it official. It was
Yes.
the Y2K year, right?
It was it was the Mayan calendar.
Mayan calendar. Yeah.
Yeah, the end of the Mayan
that's
calendar
right.
and the end of the world.
And we were at that place up in Blackfoot. I can't remember the restaurant, but
Tommy Vaughn's.
Tommy Vaughn's, and it was a small invite-only party. There's maybe 20 people there. And that's probably one of the fewer times you've seen me nervous. And I don't know what happened there, but
It was pretty funny because nobody
knew
except for you, me, Shelley, and Shannon.
Yep.
And I remember Kevin Reamer, I handed him my phone and said, "I want you to take a video here in a few minutes. You'll know when to turn it on." And he goes, "What?"
Midnight.
Yeah, and I said, "Just wait, just wait." And so we had been at a party, and Shelley had called some people and invited them to Tommy Vaughn's after closing. They closed at like
Yep. There was
10. We took over at 10. Started to, the party started at like 11 or
Yep.
something.
hung out, had a spread,
Yep.
a couple cocktails, but yeah, just mellow.
Yep.
It was mellow.
Watching short course racing on the televisions.
Yep.
And it was funny because I knew just about everybody that was racing. It was kind of strange.
Yep.
And then I walked outside at midnight and made a joke. I said, "Hey, I'm going to go out and check to see if there's any zombies. The end
Yep.
of the world is supposed to happen."
And it didn't.
It didn't. So I walked back in because Shelley and I had always told everybody that we were going to get married after the end of the world.
Yep.
And Shelley always said that was so I didn't have to if I, and I can remember the week before, maybe 10 days before, I'd asked Shelley, I said, "So, the end of the world's coming up. Are we going to get married?" And she goes, you could see her eyes roll back in her head, she's thinking, and she goes, "Let me think on it tonight." And I'm like, "What?" I thought she was, hard thinking about whether or not she was going to marry me. What she was doing was trying to figure out how we were going to get married.
Correct.
So she devised this plan, going to Tommy Vaughn's, calling Kevin and that owned the place, and setting it all up. And then that's when I called you and said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. Can you make this happen?" And you did. And well, I walked back in after midnight.
I think after you walked in, I looked at everybody. I think I tapped on a glass and said, "It's time." And everybody looked at me like, "Time for what?"
And I said, "Shelley and I are going to get married. I hope you'll all stay and join us." And her friends looked at her like with looks of, just total amazement, or they couldn't believe that she was going to marry somebody like me.
Yeah, and I remember Kevin Reimer he's looking at me like, "Time for what?" He was nervous. He thought we were gonna all turn into zombies or something. He didn't know. A lot of people did not know what's going on. You could see their brains trying to process. Oh, oh, oh.
That was pretty fun. So, yeah, I really thank you for that.
You bet. And I'm glad it stuck.
Yes.
You know, she puts up with you, so it's good.
Yeah, somehow. I don't know. And the lifestyle. I mean, she didn't know she was a Bedouin as well, you know?
No, closet Bedouin.
Yeah, there it is. So then you're fishing, you're on the lakes, the rivers around here, but you've gotten into a new business.
Yep.
And working by yourself.
Yep, that's why it's called OneWorks, because it was me. The buck stopped with me. I had to do it right or not at all.
Right.
So, but again, that's kind of when I got into wheeling a little bit with the old Scout. Again, we flash back to that outdoor program job. Down there doing a mountain bike trip with the students. We do 2 or 3 of those a year. Mountain bike all the Moab's trails. Now the wheelers and the mountain bikers call them different things, right?
Right.
And we were there, and I'm there with my buddy Justin Daly, and I see all these tire tracks going up. It was Moab Rim. We were mountain biking Moab Rim. I said, what are these tire tracks? He's like, oh yeah, there's this Easter safari and this Labor Day camp out thing. And he had a Jeep at the time, a white Jeep. I don't remember what year it was, but he's like, yeah, we come down and sign up with the Red Rock Club. He says, you ought to come with us this year. I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. So back then, we didn't trailer our rigs. We drove them down there.
Right.
And we had to be to work on Monday. You know?
Yep.
We're breaking our junk and trying to figure out how to get 400 miles back to Pocatello with broken drag links and shocks and leaf springs hanging, you know, because we got to be to work and school on Monday. So that was my intro to the what I'd call the real off-road world. So we did, I don't remember what year that was. It's probably around 98 or something.
Okay.
So we would run with Safari, do the whole registration, Spanish Fork Arena, do the whole raffle, you know. That was kind of our jam with him, he and I. And slowly, you know, I was like, great, I graduated to 31-inch tires. I thought I was badass then, you know, 31-inch tires and a 2-inch lift, you know, you could get it done in Moab back in the day. It just, from there it cascaded because I like tinkering. So every year it was like a little new mod on the Scout, you know, whether it was a injection, got rid of the carburetor so it wasn't flooding out going up or downhill. My first one, I had drum brakes.
So it didn't stop.
Well, it was a record rain year, so it was above the dump bump, Lake Michigan they called it.
Okay.
You know, you go through the water puddle, and then you go run all the slick rock ramps. Yeah.
Right, Hell's Revenge and all
Hell's
that.
Revenge and all that, yeah. Let's talk about rain and drum brakes. Wet drum brakes.
Right.
So everybody would kind of stop on the bottom of these hills, and I'd just get on the radio, and I'd be like, drum brakes coming down. Next thing you know, they'd be getting out of my way because I just, you know, everybody would crawl, front tires would hit the deck, and they'd do a nice transition. No, I was like, just every slick rock. I mean, I was landing in the sand every time. The sand slowed me down, so yeah. So every year I'd make a modification. Eventually got disc brakes on the front of the Scout. Next evolution, because I was always dragging the ass end. They called me the tail dragger because the Scout ends hung long.
Right.
So I bobbed the back end. That was 1 year modification. And eventually the thing got tubed out into a buggy.
Okay.
4-link suspension, air shocks all the way around. So that was kind of just trail running. So that was my start in my official serious off-roading.
Did you, at that time, did you know about International Harvester Parts and Jeff Ismail there in Auburn, California?
It kind of rings a bell. Did he have a web form or website?
Yes. Yeah, he still does, yeah.
Yeah, and it was like every modification you need to make on a Scout.
Yep.
Yeah, I followed that website, so I knew the shackle reversal, I knew the rag joint, all the, you know, back then we had to build our rigs. You
Right.
couldn't just buy it off the shelf. Like now it's so kit and commercialized. But no, back then it was like you would take a piece of DOM tubing, split it down the middle, and encapsulate your drag link and weld it all the way across so your drag link wouldn't fold. Stuff like that.
Right.
Busy work.
Yep.
So, yeah, I am familiar with his website.
Okay. Yeah, he's an interview I did not too long ago.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Up there in Northern California.
Right.
That he's built a pretty successful business. It's all things international harvester.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pretty cool guy. So then you got the shop going.
Yep.
You're doing off-road.
Powder coating, little fabrication on the side. Yep.
And when did you find out about competitive rock crawling?
Well, so for my birthday, my wife bought me tickets to the event you put on was in Henderson.
Okay.
Remember the sprayed out train car?
Oh,
or
yeah.
box car?
Yep.
Yep. So Henderson. She bought me airfare from IF to there for my birthday. Bought We Rock tickets. And I think there was even a pit pass that came with it. So we
Right.
had access to the pits. So we got an extra armband to wander the pits. So this is where I met you in the elevator. You probably don't remember it, but
Probably not. I was.
you get in the elevator, and I knew who you were at the time because I was kind of following some of the We Rock stuff online. And so you get in the elevator, I was like, Big Rich. I was starstruck. It was hilarious. My wife's like, oh, come on, don't embarrass me. I was like, hi, Big Rich. And you're like, hi. And kind of went on your merry way because you were running an event. And it was the coolest thing because I'm in the pits. Tracy Jordan, the Lovell brothers, all these people that I kind of seen in magazines and in various media forms at the time. I'm watching them front row.
Right.
And so yeah, hung out at that event and I was like, okay, kind of had some life decisions to make because all my buddies that we used to wheel with, we started doing our own thing, skipping safari. So we'd go the weekend before, the weekend after. Well, most of them decided to get married and started having kids. Well, the kid thing, when you got a newborn, it's hard to make a Moab trip.
Right.
So a lot of them kind of quit wheeling. Well, Shannon and I didn't have kids, so I'm like, well, let's build a buggy.
So the buggy was your kid.
The buggy was my kid, yeah.
And let's talk about the significance of the number that you picked for your team.
Yep. So Monsters Incorporated,
The movie.
the movie. Yep. So when a kid invades the monster world, right? They have a 2319, and everybody freaks out because
Code 2319.
2319, and all the special op guys come in and they clean up the contamination. Yeah. So it was kind of a joke because we didn't have kids. She works with kids. I work with kids in McCall. Not that we're anti-kid, but we just, we did our part raising other people's kids for them.
Right.
So yeah, my number 2319 from Monsters Inc. That's just something that happened, and for some reason, I think I had a little miniature Sully, and he used to ride on my car back in the day. Yeah,
It's better than a duck.
it's better than a duck. Yeah, and he's and at the time, there's a popular movie, so all the kids and spectators, we'd be lined up on courses. They would see Sully and come check out the car. So it was kind of a good fan base allure. The kids are like, yeah, I want to watch this car.
Now that buggy, you had a single seat, unlimited rig, and was
two of them.
two of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Was one of those? Did the Scout end up as one of those, or
No.
Okay.
So I sold the Scout. I had it for a while. It was a chassis, and I built another trail rig, a green Jeep. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah, with the Lexan hood. And that's kind of when we got out of trail running, and then kind of built the buggy, sold the trail rig. We had an overlap there for a while. So I built the first car, and our first event was Pima.
okay?
So
Pima
I-
Motorsports Park in
Yeah.
Tucson.
Yeah. You remember that dust hole?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was brutal.
It's a pit with a lot of concrete in it, and it is dusty, windy.
Yeah.
It's
So was it Pima? Or was it California? I'm trying to remember. No, it wasn't Tucson. What was the one in California?
Oh, Paris?
Paris, yes.
Paris,
Excuse me,
California.
I stand
Okay.
correct. I
Ricky
always
Johnson's old motocross
I
track.
get confused with those two events.
Okay.
So yes, we did do Pima. Paris was my first event.
Paris, okay.
Paris. All right. So first event, 3 days before, finished the car. We're at the Circus parking lot. I think is where I did my test and tune and was putting stickers, like my numbers, on the car, checking fluids. And I'm driving it around the Circus parking lot, just shaking the air out of the coolant lines, you know.
Right.
So I was nowhere near prepared. But we roll in. I think it was at the Hooters. They did tech inspection.
Yep, we did tech inspection at the Hooters.
And I had gone over the list. And Little Rich did my tech. And he's like, that's the easiest tech I've ever had to do. He said, I wish more drivers were like you.
Wow, very
Yeah.
good.
I mean, he just went through the list, waited in line for 2 hours, but took all of 2 minutes to do my tech. And mind you, this car has had less than half an hour of runtime on it.
Right.
So we finally roll over to the raceway there, and I mean, my brakes aren't even seated. And so I'm running up and down that dirt track, right, just trying to seat the brakes, just to
Right.
get them to stop. And all the stadium lights were on. Well, I had done glow-in-the-dark rims. All the lights, they clicked them off as I'm running down the raceway. And so all you see are these 4 glow-in-the-dark rims hauling ass down a dirt road, me trying to learn how to drive this thing.
Right.
And Dustin and Becca Webster were watching me at the time. And so when the lights kicked off and the glow-in-the-dark rims kicked on, Becca just went nuts. She's like, "Woohoo!" You know, and they like the show. You know, that's their jam. And so Dustin comes over to me and we start chatting up. He's like, "Well, he started giving me pointers." He's like, "Do you have water in the tires?" I'm like, "What?"
What?
You know, rear engine buggy, water in the tires. He helped me fill my tires up with water that night. I'm like,
Nice.
"How full?" He says, "All the way." He loaned me their little water filler upper thing through the valve stem.
Right.
He kind of hooked me up with that. So yeah, that next morning after the national anthem, yeah, by this time I'm realizing I'm way over my head, you know.
We didn't have sportsman classes then. You were just
I was just with the unlimited.
Yep.
Yeah, and I got, you know, Tracy Jordan on one side and the Lovell brothers on the other side of me, and all these pretty big names. And I think there were a lot of cars that event too.
Oh, absolutely.
40 plus.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was a busy time. So national anthem quits. I start out on my first course, and I mean, coming off that one fin, I mean, I tipped it over, and I didn't do the PCV valve, so I'm smoking. Cylinder heads are locked up, and I'm like the first one tipped over. And you know how that was kind of landscaped out to where it was pretty good for spectators, right?
absolutely.
So I look across, I'm like, I'm the first schmuck upside down, needing recovery. Here, recovery on, you know, whatever course B1 or A1. And then I look across the landscape, and then I see another guy tip over. And then I see a third guy tip over. This is within the first, 4 minutes after the national anthem.
There was a lot of rollovers that weekend.
And it was like right out of the gate. Everybody's upside down. I'm like, okay, I'm not the only schmuck upside down on course. So that was my first dabble with professional rock crawling was that event.
It was Paris, California.
Yep.
That's,
And so yeah, we had 2 days, right? 8 courses. We finished 1 course that event. So
you know what? That's actually not bad for back in those days,
Correct.
because those courses were a bitch.
oh man, yeah.
You know, that was when Rich was really setting up some gnarly stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there was teams that would accuse him of building car killers,
Yep.
just so that the second day would run faster.
Yep, I believe it.
And now he does Trail Hero in
Yep.
the Trail Breaker event.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Same.
Yeah, it might be some same complaints at times, but you know what? It's
working.
Nobody has to drive them.
Yep.
You know, I mean, if the drivers really think that something is too much,
It's a choice.
yeah, it's their choice. But you know, if all the drivers decide not to do it, then that really sends a message to the course designer. So,
And
know.
you have seen that, and I have as well when I was spotting for Tyler Roundy.
right,
There was that one obstacle that was too much, and everybody was like, we're done. And as an event promoter, you totally respected that. And I was
Right.
like, that's awesome. So you always were able to adjust for that.
yep. And I remember one time there was concerns of a rock that if it fell off from up above
Sure.
and the car was in the right place, and it was like, do you know how hard it is going to be to move that rock? And I think it ended up taking us like 45 minutes to an hour to move that rock because it did not want to go anywhere.
Yep.
There would have had to have been like a 9.0 earthquake for that rock to fall. But,
Sure.
you know, you do what you got to do.
Yep.
So then, what was it? Was it the game in rock crawling that you liked, or was it the technical aspect of figuring out the line, or was it just what was it?
Well, there were at least two things I can think of.
Okay,
Yes, the puzzle, for sure. I mean, I was always the kind of trail leader, spotter in Moab when we were trail running. So I always kind of had a knack for seeing the lines. Again, from the rock climbing, where to put your tires, where to put your hands. I could see the path, you
Okay.
know. So I definitely enjoyed that, enjoyed walking courses, and then putting that puzzle to fruition under the clock.
right.
That was always a fun part. The other part is, a lot of people get the summit fever, podium fever. That was never what it was for me. It was about the adventure, the people I'd meet, the fans, the spectators, and it was, back then, it was grassroots people that would show up, and competitors as well.
Okay.
If you ask my wife, I was always one that shut down the campfire. Okay, I like people. I was always
You and Todd Young.
Exactly. I mean, right there, 100% nailed it. Yeah, we would shut down the campfire. So between the fans and the people, the camaraderie that came behind it, it was just fun to be entertaining. So I remember a couple events in, say, Cedar City. I think I made the front page of the paper.
Nice.
I think I did 3 events at Cedar City total, maybe 4. By the 4th event, I actually had a following of guys that were like, this guy's not going to finish the course, but, he's going to either roll it across the finish line, he's going to roll it early on, he's going to be upside down trying to get upright, or he's going to break something.
It would be fun to watch, though.
Yeah, so I had a following in Cedar City. They knew who I was, and so I just enjoyed that aspect of it. Not really caring about the podium, but just the fun of the adventure, And then the other part was the builder in me. Build it, break it, build it better.
Right.
And that stemmed from my trail years, and putting a scout together, because let's say there's a little work in making a scout trail worthy.
Right. I mean, you could have picked something a little harder, maybe like a Land Rover.
Sure. Land Bruiser.
So anyway, one of the event that I remember most,
Yep.
you running, or at least one situation at an event,
Mm-hmm.
was in Oroville at the man-made course that we did there along the river, the Feather River there.
Yep.
And I could remember over the radio saying, hey, we're going to need help with this recovery. We got a car in a tree. And before I responded, I think I closed my eyes, tried to envision a car in a tree. And about that time, Bob Rogie walks up and he goes, or maybe I was walking past him and he goes, just get a fucking chainsaw, I think is what he said. Bob is a guy doesn't say a whole lot of words. but it was like, you're going to need a fucking chainsaw.
That's,
Something like that.
That's awesome. I
And
hadn't heard that story. That's good.
So
Would have been easier.
It would have been. Would have changed the course a lot.
Yes.
So I walk over, and here you are against the tree, but in the tree. It wasn't like we could just pull you one way or the other and get you off of the tree.
Right.
Because of the way the terrain was and how you were wedged into this tree. It was
wedged is a good word.
It was an interesting affair. Wasn't like you were going to jump right out of the buggy either.
Oh no, it was a drop.
Yeah.
I had to climb down my tires and on the suspension. So it was. I would say that was probably one of my favorite setups was Orville.
Really?
Yeah, because you've got this great. They did a good job on the shotcrete, but then you had these features, of like old military trucks that you'd have to drive over. They were part of the course,
right?
So you're kind of mixing rock crawling with demolition derby with monster truck,
right?
Driving over school buses, that kind of stuff. So yeah, and I think the fans appreciated that too, in Orville. So yeah, and the technicality of those courses, they were just fun.
Right.
They were just fun, especially with a rear steer vehicle, having to drive through the old military truck bed. But yeah, the one thing my car did okay with, but not always, was those steep climbs. So I believe that tree was sprayed into the course, and it was on that steep climb. So I didn't make the breakover, pitched sideways, and that's how I got wedged behind that.
Okay.
So I think what we ended up having doing was taking my front winch, my control winch, and winching me up into the tree so we could pivot the car around the tree
and then
lower it back down.
Right.
Yeah, and get out of the tree.
Because the last thing I wanted to do is cut the tree down.
No, yeah, and because it would have changed that course.
Right.
Because you would have had that extra. It wouldn't have forced you on the steepest part of that climb.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
and we're all tree huggers here. Let's face it.
Yes. Yes. Our renewable resources.
Mm-hmm.
So you also helped me when Dave Cole asked me to come down to KOH
Yes.
and run Chocolate Thunder.
Yep.
And do recoveries there.
Yep.
And it was the year after the big traffic jam, and I think it was Dean Bullock tried to pass Tony Pellegrino.
And they were all upside down and on top of each other.
Yeah, and
Chit Joe.
yeah, and they didn't have it well marked off at the time, and there was all sorts of kinds of people in the way. So they decided they were going to they had to change how they addressed Chocolate Thunder at that time and that little gatekeeper down there. So we went down and we rigged up. Well, with one vehicle, we could make like 6 different pulls.
Yes.
It was pretty awesome.
And it was fast recovery too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I remember it was a Christian group that helped volunteer that year. Is that right?
I think it was. Yeah.
And they were trail runners, and when I'd get out there and start, because I was kind of used to the wee rock flow of recovery.
Meaning you get it done as quick as possible.
And
you didn't have time.
You keep the crowd going. You keep the flow of the event going, and that's what I think Dave wanted to accomplish with that.
Right.
Get rid of the bottlenecks. That was the first year he started doing that. Made sense, Keep the fans happy, keep the action going. And
right.
these trail crew, the first recovery, the first one we whipped, the lead of their crew kind of looks at me and he's like, "Whoa." He's like, "That happened fast." I says, "Yep, that's how it's going to be all weekend."
Yeah, because I mean, you think about it, you got more cars coming.
Yeah.
That first recovery isn't the last car on course.
Correct.
And
they picked it up. That was a great group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we did a really good job there. It was fun too.
Yeah. And we had our pull-out spots too. So when somebody would break an axle, it'd be like, okay,
get them to that
spot. So we kept it flowing.
Right. And it worked for years. I know you did it with me 2 or 3 years.
2 years.
2 years. And then Matt Hodges from Texas came up and helped me for a couple of years as well.
Yep.
while I still did that, and then Shelley and I quit going to KOH just because it was
It's a lot.
it was a lot. Yeah, it was getting to be too much. Maybe I'm just getting too old for that kind of a crowd.
Sure.
So, what are you doing? Well, let's go into the four low.
Okay.
Shelley was always amazed at all the things that you always had going here in the shop. It wasn't just the powder coating; it was the remote control cars and airplanes,
Yes.
and the rock crawlers and everything that you would create. I mean, you were always building stuff, and every time we walked into the shop, we didn't know what you were building. Whether it be a little desktop or a tabletop still. Is still the right word for it?
Yeah.
I guess so.
Still,
Yeah,
yeah. A
it
hillbilly
wasn't for
flute.
drinking; it was for creating fuel.
Hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer. There you go.
Yeah, that thing came in handy during COVID. Just
Yeah,
so you
thank
know.
you, COVID. COVID made some things legal, and a lot of things illegal.
Yep.
But you always had something that that intrigued you that you were working on. Like building your own ovens. I mean, now you got an oven you can drive into.
Yep.
You've done mushrooms, meaning you grew mushrooms.
Gourmet mushrooms. Yes.
Growing gourmet mushrooms. When I say doing mushrooms, I don't mean
Correct.
psilocybins and purple and pink
Sure.
school buses.
No, we're talking lion's mane, blue oysters, gourmet for restaurants.
Right.
And that would have taken off, but COVID got me because all the restaurants shut down. That
Yeah.
was my another venture, and I might get back to it.
Oh, good. Because you still have all the facility.
I still have the lab and the grow room. Yep. So I still have my cultures in the fridge. So.
There you go.
But yeah, mushrooms, going from RC airplanes to growing gourmet mushrooms. Yeah.
Right.
It's a weird brain.
And hand sanitizer in between.
Yep.
So you wrote articles for Four Low in our man cave,
Yep.
which was, I really liked what you did because you put a lot of thought process into your writing, and you could see that, and you made it humorous, but yet still technical, and that was awesome.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, I did enjoy doing that. With the business ran out of time. I mean, that's
Oh, absolutely.
It's time consuming when you do an article because, like I said, you come back to that all or nothing. I'm going to do it right. I'm not just going to
Half-ass it. Yeah.
hand in a junk paper that was written in the last deadline point. The reason I missed deadlines was because I was mind effing things to make sure it was a good product.
Right.
And I do that with my powder coating. I do that with everything. Do
Right.
it right. So.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with chasing quality.
Correct.
That's a good trait.
I think we need more of that in this world. So
Absolutely.
if I had to preach out on this podcast, I would say take the time and do it right, guys.
There you go.
It'll get you further in life than the shortcuts.
Yeah. So, what kind of things are keeping you going now?
So my new venture, my wife bought me a jet boat.
Okay.
Okay, I've been jet boating with my buddy on the Salmon River. Anybody who knows anything about running rivers, there's lots of rocks. Some
Yes.
of them move, some of them will put a hole in your boat. So it's kind of like rock crawling on water. It's a
you go.
puzzle.
Okay.
You have to memorize your courses, and when your boat slips sideways or the water level rises and drops, you have to adjust. So that's kind of my new puzzle game. So I'm working on just some of the Idaho rivers here locally. And my long game, it would be fun to learn the Salmon River. I may or may not get there, but I've spent a lot of time on that river back in the day with CW Hogg, where I met my wife.
Right.
Well, now we steelhead fish on it with my buddy who's learned the first 20 miles of that river. And he's maybe 1%. I mean, there's only about 12 people that know how to run that section of river.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not for the faint of heart.
No, it's one of
pretty
the
intense.
It's truly, it might be the last true wild river in the United States.
Correct, because it's a river of no return. There's no dams, and you go to the end of the road, and the only thing you pretty much have to get out is a pack trail on one side of the river.
So if you're going to have an issue, you better make sure
you swim to the right side of the river.
Exactly.
Because you're going to have to swim it twice if you don't. These are things we think about and talk about.
Yeah, right. Exactly. When you say there's a pack trail on one side of the river, it's true.
The rest is Frank Church wilderness.
Right.
I mean, bear country and all kinds of things that want to kill you. Rattlesnakes. Yeah. So that's been the newer venture. This is just doing the jet boat thing. And again, it comes back to that being on the water.
Right.
Fishing's part of it, but the people you meet as well. You know.
They're adventurous souls that decide to put themselves out there.
Yes. Yep.
And how about we've talked about Shannon. Do you want to talk about her accident?
Yeah, I can. If I get emotional,
Okay.
don't freak out.
Right. No.
It's a very passionate. It's a very much a changing point in our lives. About 5 years ago, her and a friend were biking down a country road out here. Speed limit's about 45 miles an hour. A kid. I guess this is the biggest plug. If anybody hears this, he had a new vehicle. He saw them. But he looked down and he checked his phone, So you see the commercials where they're like, oh, yeah, don't check your phone. And a lot of this younger generation, that no big deal. I can multitask this, that, and the other. Well, yeah, it got us. She got hit from behind, ended up in the ICU for about 2 weeks. Had a pretty bad orbital and occipital brain injury. She had about 3 clots that happened.
Wow.
As a result. Broken sacrum, some ribs, shoulder, but that was all triage stuff. They didn't even address that. They were busy putting her in the MRI, making sure her brain was working. So that night, I watched her, my wife, love of my life, I watched her code out. Her heart stopped like 3 times that night. ER nurses would come in and, pump her with something and bring her back. And, at this point, she's in a coma. I don't know what I'm going to get, I worked for C.W. Hogg with people who had brain injuries, So I'm already doing the math in my head. I'm like, she could be a vegetable. She could be, what are the faculties, quality of life? I'm already going through this. And this is only like the first couple of nights. So, yeah, pretty tough thing to witness. I used to be a wilderness first responder, part of requirement for my job, and I've worked on people that were in that state. But it's different when it's someone you're that close to.
Right.
Miraculously, a couple weeks later, she wakes up. She's talking, she's walking, not great, but the first day, so it was a month of rehab. So we finally get her moved over to the rehab floor. First day, rehab doctor comes in. She had known him from past experiences, Dr. Hill. And he's like, oh, okay, because all the doctors come in at like 4 or 6 a.m. So that's where my sleep cycle got really messed up because I was always there for that. Come home, run the business, and then I'd sleep during the day. So he comes in, and he's like, all right, well, good to see you, yada yada. She's talking pretty lucid with him. Next day, he comes in and sits down. He's like, well, I looked at your MRIs and your brain scans. He's like, I can't believe we're having a conversation right now. He's like, you shouldn't be cognitive or talking based on the brain scans. Yeah, so she's a trooper. I mean, total trooper. And yes, it still affects her to this day. And I still do have some anger issues towards that individual. I probably always will.
Right.
It's very hard to forgive and forget. I mean, he did stop. It wasn't a hit and run. He did the right thing he could for being a young kid. Yeah, but probably shouldn't have checked his phone. That's all there is to it.
Right.
But no, she's she's back to work. She's running her occupational thing for the school district and doing the best she can, given the hand she was dealt. And it was not an easy hand.
Right.
I don't know how I would have handled that. You know, a lot of people, I might have just given up on life, being that banged up.
Right.
But, you know, she trudges. She does. She's a trooper for sure. So
Awesome. And one of the things that you guys do is dogs.
Yep.
And you've created an agility course out here on your property called Daisyland, and talk about that and the love affair of pets.
So yeah, always. My dad had the Great Pyrenees growing up. I always joke I was raised by a pack of Great Pyrenees. I remember trying to ride one once as a kid. He bucked me off and growled at me. He didn't bite me, but I learned dog language pretty quick there. So she always had a passion with her couple of rescue dogs during her graduate school, always teaching them tricks. I had a couple dogs at the time, so when we moved out to this place, we ended up with 4 dogs, and we just always liked animals. We've always done rescues for the most part. And then she got into doing this agility thing with a local place called Odd Mad. One Dog Makes a Difference. Jane Goodinger runs that program. So, yeah, we had the property, and growing up, she always wanted to have a place for her dog. Daisy was one of her first loves that she did agility with. She actually won a national event in agility.
Nice.
Out of in Arizona. And so, yeah, I bought an old tractor, and we tilled up a little 100 by 200 patch of dirt, planted it with some grass seed, and eventually we're getting it fenced in. I built a little pavilion over the years, and it just, the group of people that do agility, they're just good people. A lot like the off-road world. It's a good attraction.
Right.
So I think that was a lot of the drive for building that. I've run agility personally a little bit, but not the passion like my wife has. But then, the people it attracts is what really keeps me keeping it going. Because we don't make money on it, you know. No. It's a hobby.
That's what most passions happen, you know. They're time consumers, but it gives you a release from your everyday day-to-day thing.
Sure. And you know, we say we rescue dogs, but I think they rescue us.
True.
And so one of my favorite parts of the day is when I wake up in the morning and I kind of get going on the couch, and these dogs that they kind of found us, all our rescues. We're at 6 or 7 now. We've had many over the years.
Seemed like a lot more than that.
It did seem like a lot more, yeah. They're busy. But in the morning, they're a little more calm, and I'll just be kind of waking up, checking texts or whatever, and they'll just come lay on me. And that's kind of just one of my favorite parts of the day is just that calm. You know, if I can't get out fishing, then at least I have my morning snuggles with my pack.
There you go.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, we've been petless for quite a while.
Sure.
And with not knowing our current living situation, how long that's going to last,
It's hard.
It's hard to make plans.
Well, and that's responsible because so many people, it's Christmas puppies and this and that. No, you realize owning an animal is a commitment.
Right.
And it's not just buying a chicken for Easter, you got to
Right.
take care of that thing the rest of its life.
Some rabbit or a turtle or something
Sure.
like that. You know, dogs and cats especially, or horses, they take a lot more energy than, say, a turtle.
Yeah, and that's just being responsible.
Right. I never understood where somebody will make a decision to buy somebody a pet.
Yep.
Or give them a pet, whether they buy it or however they acquire it. Whether it's a dog or a cat, it's typically dogs, and because cats pick you. I mean, you can go you can go and say, I want that cat, and then the cat disappears because it doesn't like you.
Yeah, there's 2 of them running around here, and they both pick me.
Yeah, exactly. They just show up. That's what happened with our cat Callie that we traveled with We Rock and Dirt Riot.
Yep.
That cat it showed up at Shelly's house, and when we went on the road, the cat,
Jumped in, said, let's go.
yeah, let's go do this.
It's awesome.
It was awesome, yeah. But it's I can't understand why people do that. Whether it's like for their grandkids. Grandparents have a tendency to do that.
Yeah.
Here's a dog for my granddaughter or grandson or whatever, and it's like, why did you do that? Was your grandchild really interested in having that pet, or were you just assuming they would be? Because now you've just put a lot of pressure on that child or the parent, which typically is what ends up happening, and that parent all of a sudden has another responsibility that they really possibly didn't want. Otherwise, they would have done it.
Yeah, and I think grandparents, they like the dopamine hit of making their grandchild smile.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think that's some of that reason. But, I think it's more responsible to just buy them a candy bar, get them sugared up, and then send them home.
Right, I agree. I would
That's
agree.
my philosophy on that.
I would never buy any of my grandkids' pets.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Oh, here's one of your shop cats.
Yeah, that's Stinky.
Hey, Stinky.
Stinky is OneWorks' official position is human resources.
Right.
So if anybody has a problem, take it up with Stinky.
Yeah, and Stinky's been around for a while.
Yes. Yeah. Especially for an outside country living shop cat. He's done all right.
You can see his ears are kind of...
He's a little nard.
Yeah, he's gotten shredded a little bit.
A little bit.
He looks at you like, what are you doing in my shop?
Yep. But he comes and says hi.
Yeah. He's looking at you right now going, oh, what are you doing?
He's probably wanting food.
Oh, yeah.
Like all cats.
He's over here going, why are you in my chair? So what do you think is next for you?
Couple things. I would like to grow the business to a point where I'm less involved.
Okay.
I imagine that's the goal for a lot of business owners that you might have interviewed, so that it frees them up.
Or myself.
Or yourself. So it frees you up to do the things you want to do. And that's a really hard balance.
Yeah, it is.
Especially the way our modern society is structured. So that's my professional goal, is just to kind of get a couple solid guys, get it flowing a little better, so that I can free up to finish some of these things that I've started. And that is a ADD curse.
Right.
We love to start things, and we get bored. So, been kind of journaling about that, and kind of picking my priorities of things that I want to finish. Whether it's the gourmet mushroom farm or just these little build projects I have floating around the shop.
Nice.
So that's kind of the direction I want to aim things. And then learn how to read the water with a jet boat. Learn how to be a better jet boat driver.
There you go.
Because it's not point and shoot.
No, it's not. No. And it's and you're right. It has a lot of the same attributes as the rock crawling does. Reading a line. There's some people that it always amazes me when they come out and rock crawl, and they're first on course, and you can tell they can't see the line.
They don't see it. Yep.
And they may have walked and listening to everybody else, and they're trying to do what the other guys. Those are the ones that always hate to go first.
Yep.
Because they really don't see it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people will pick it up over time, and some people will never do it. But it's part of the game. So it's a fascinating watch for sure.
Absolutely. And there's this is old timer Bill Saliu, who runs the Salmon River, and I've gotten to know him a little bit from being up there. And he says, come down. He says, within the first day, I will tell you if you got it or don't got it. And he's Coast Guard certified and all that, and he's been running that river for 40 plus years.
Wow.
But same thing, he'll tell you right out of the gate if you got it or don't got it. So.
Right. And that's there's a lot of that. It's like running a bigger boat
Sure.
with like twin engines
Mm-hmm.
without a bow thruster. I've never been afraid to drive anything.
Yep.
Drive a semi truck. Hell, I got the semi truck in and out of your driveway here
Multiple times.
without dropping into that drainage or the
the
water
culvert.
trench, the culvert out there or anything.
It's a little tight.
Yeah, it's a little tight, but the boat it's one of those things that, and I guess again, it's I don't have a problem put that thing in the idea of putting it into its berth
Mm-hmm.
when there's not an expensive boat next to me. When there's an expensive boat next to me,
I got you.
I have a little bit more fear because I really don't want to be fixing somebody else's boat.
Yep.
If I damage the hull on my own boat, so be it.
Yep.
I can deal with that. That's like damaging my truck.
Yeah.
As opposed to somebody else's. But it's that's my only fear. But it takes, Josh Jackson is the one that's gotten me into the bigger boats like that, and he has got a natural touch.
Sure.
To put that boat into, like where we fuel, it's a narrow spot, single wide berth, and he'll back that thing in there, in a 50-foot boat, 48-foot boat that's 14 foot wide, 14 and a half foot wide, and you've got a stall that's only 16 feet wide, and you're backing it in there with winds and everything else. It's amazing, and he just nails it every time. And every time we go get fuel, he's like, "You ready?" I'm like, "No, go ahead and do it." And one time I was getting ready to pull the boat in to my own berth, and he was with me, and I'm like, "Okay, I got this." It's a little windy out, not too bad, probably a 10-mile-an-hour cross breeze, and but I knew it was the way it was blowing. It'd blow me into my side of the dock away from the other boats, and all of a sudden one engine dies.
Right.
And I crack the throttle, try to start it back up, and it ain't starting. And I go, "Okay, Josh, it's yours." And I walked away, and he just put it in that stall like nothing, like it was nothing. And I was like, "All right, I got to get to that point where it doesn't bother me."
Yeah. So do you have alternating reverse and forward between the two motors?
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
you can kind of get the crab.
Oh yeah, you can
crab
walk that
spin.
boat. Yeah.
Okay.
Against the wind, it's a little tough without a bow thruster.
Right. Because it's a lot of sail.
Yeah, yeah, because it's still, it's 19, 20 foot tall as well too.
Yeah.
So it's like a big old box out there when the wind's blowing.
So this last trip on the main salmon, this guy Bill I was talking about, he had they're a jet drive, not a prop. So on a jet drive, you've got a dump, which gives you reverse.
Right.
So he's coming in. Well, it was parked in the parking lot up there, and I think somebody borrowed a screw that connected his linkage to the dump.
Oh.
So he's headed downriver. We're about 6 miles in, and we're at a cabin down there, and all of a sudden he goes to pull in, and he's just doing circles. Well, so it's a twin pump.
Right.
We call it the twin. And yeah, so one of the dumps was locked in the down reverse position. And he just handles it as cool as can be. I mean, he's either done it long enough, he's wrecked enough junk that didn't bother him, he got it handled. But
Right.
yeah, it's like you said, you lose that one side of the motor and you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
I got it, I don't got it.
Yeah, it's like, anybody has ever paddled, been in a canoe,
Mm-hmm.
and unless you know the proper stroke, you're moving your paddle from side to side to keep yourself going straight.
Yep.
And then you see somebody that knows what they're doing, and they're using a J stroke, and they're just nice, straight, even in the wind. They're never shifting sides, and it's just a nice, smooth,
And some of that you just got to get out there and do it to learn it.
Yep, absolutely. Well, is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to touch on? Any cool projects? Anything you're building now?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
I mean, the project I'm currently working on with my buddy who runs a jet boat, we're actually, so he was running high water last year. I wasn't with him on that trip. So you've got the center top. Well, he stuffed it in a wave.
Oh, wow.
Pretty big, and blew his center top off. And
That's a big wave.
yeah, it was high water. And he kind of thought he heard the windows cracking. So our current project is we're reinforcing that center top with more lockdowns, making it more aerodynamic,
Okay.
water dynamic,
Yeah.
fluid dynamic. And then we're putting Lexan windshields in it.
Okay.
So
Cool.
I did print him a mug, his koozie, his Yeti koozie. I've got a friend with a vinyl printer, and it was just to remind him, it says, boats aren't submarines. He got a kick out of that. And I said, well, I just got to make sure you remember that.
You know, though, in the Navy, boats are submarines.
Yep. And then you know how it goes with boats. I have probably half a page of list of things I want to do with my newer boat. Adjust the seats, move the batteries, the trolling motor, the angle on it's not right, so I need to cut that off and get my aluminum fab back on and get the angle corrected on that. You know, just those little things that make it, that take you months to do, so you have a good day out on the water.
Right, but it personalizes it to your tastes.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, and that's owning a boat. You
Yep.
know that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. What do they say? The two happiest days for a boat owner are the day you buy your boat and the day you sell your boat. I have a lot of happy days just sitting on my boat.
And I agree with that as well. Yeah.
Well, Andrew, I want to say thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me and telling your story. It's been great. I just wish I could get here more often and spend more time with you, because I always cherish those times.
And me as well. But that's the lifestyle, right?
It is.
And it honestly, it's been an honor knowing you. I have utmost respect for you and how you navigate this world, and you've been an inspiration for me. A lot of times, even when I was down and out with Shannon's accident or business, I kind of remember, what would Big Rich do here? He'd keep trudging. He'd keep going.
Yeah, that's part of life.
And that's part of the off-road culture.
Yes.
And I think that's why a lot of people are lured to it. Okay, well, we're broke now. How do we keep going?
I think that is a big allure to it. It's because you're going to owning an off-road vehicle is one of those things that not just I don't want to say Jeep, but an off-road vehicle, because it can be a pickup truck, it could be whatever, but it's when you take it off the pavement.
Could be a jet boat.
Yes, anything that you take off pavement or off the main road where everybody else is at, you're going to have issues. And if you're not prepared for those issues, then it can be a life and death situation. It can be, one of those hobby ending situations where you just give up. But the true enthusiast, or the person with the passion for that, never gives up and continues to trudge through and make it work.
Yep, and always being willing to ask for help every now and then.
Yep, absolutely.
It takes a community.
Yeah, it does.
And
it does.
You've built some pretty cool communities with your various venues. So thanks for that.
Oh,
Just so you know.
You're welcome. And you know what? I have to say that if I leave a legacy, my legacy is the people that I have met that have had a chance to meet each other as well.
Yep.
And create their own community outside of where I'm at with them. And it's amazing. Just at Josh England's wedding, and the people that showed up for his wedding, and the diversity of where we met them, and knowing that it was because of what we do is why they were there.
Yeah.
Not just, not because they were there because they knew Josh, but they were all there because of what we were doing.
Yeah.
And that's if that's my legacy, then I'm very happy with that.
That's a good satisfaction.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, thank you so much.
You bet.
And good luck in life.
Yep, you as well. Be
All
well.
right. Bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.